Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan Ennis. This is Ukraine War breaking news update for the 27th of May 2024. I thought I'd just do this a little bit as an extra breaking news because I think it's so significant. There are certain inflection points in this war. You can talk about, I guess, ATACMS coming, you can talk about HIMARS, you can talk about F-16s. Those kind of moments where, okay, things can change here, there's a capability difference here. This isn't so much a capability difference, but just a political red line that has been crossed that I think is incredibly important. Sorry to stop there, my chair was just depressing. So what has happened? Well, France, and you know what, say what you like about France throughout this war, Emmanuel Macron has been on it the last couple of months. He has been saying all the right things, and then there has been a change in what France is committing in terms of money and equipment to Ukraine, and here we see them be the first to make possibly the biggest change. I think this is the most significant step change throughout the whole of the war. Everything's been, you could argue maybe F-16s, but everything's been like bits of equipment here, bits of equipment there, maybe a step up in terms of equipment capability. Planes, jets were a slightly different thing. You could argue main battle tanks, but they're already being given T family tanks. This is a case of troops going to Ukraine. So General Syrskyi, the commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, has said that France will soon send the first military instructors to Ukraine to train troops. So these aren't troops fighting on the front line, and we were never expecting that to be the case. But this is the opening of the door that allows for other things. And this will also be something to look out for in terms of how Russia reacts to this. This is incredibly significant. France has been targeted in terms of cyber warfare by the Russians. They are under no illusions as to who Russia are and as to who Putin is. Zelensky asked Macron earlier in the war to do the diplomacy between Ukraine and Putin, to the point that many people slagged off Macron for thinking he was the one, and I said this myself, he wanted to be the kind of deal maker, the person who is in the middle of everything, say, hey, look at me, it's all about me, Macron, and I'm going to telephone Putin lots, and I'm going to try and do a deal between these two nations, and it didn't happen. And everyone looked at Macron and said, oh, you know, why are you keeping on doing this? Oh, this is war. You should be supporting Ukraine more, obviously, rather than trying to sue for peace. But apparently, Macron had been asked to do that by Zelensky. So Macron was just doing what Zelensky had asked. And therefore, you know, it was kind of unfair in hindsight that he got so much stick for that. Well, since then, he seems to be doing more of what he's wanting to do, or what he sees as fit. And this, it could cause, because France are a big player, right? No matter what you say, they are the second biggest arms exporter in the world. Them and Germany are the EU in terms of the major forces. You've got those two, and then Italy maybe a little bit below them, and Spain below them. So, but in terms of the big players in the world, you've got the US, you've got France, you've got Germany, you've got the UK, I would argue. And for France to say, right, we are going to be the first nation to send troops, opens the door for everyone else to go, okay, good stuff. But it's also at that high level. I was saying the clever thing could be someone like Lithuania to put trainers in there. So just much lower down the rung of big nations. You're coming right down to a much smaller nation that Russia might not go, right, that's it, that's massively escalatory. And they say, okay, it's a smaller nation, that's not cool, but it's not like a huge red line. This could be seen as, well, will be seen as escalatory by Russia, of course. Question is, what are they going to do about it? Because the only place they can go now is nuclear missiles. So if you are fairly sure, or well, more than fairly sure, if you are very sure they're not going to do see this as a nuclear red line, then, you know, do it. In fact, what else can we do? How far can we push Russia here to give Ukraine the biggest boost on the battlefield? Now, what this will do is it will train Ukrainian troops inside Ukraine, so you don't have to send them for however many weeks, months, whatever it is, to Poland, Germany, UK. So Operation Interflex, where they're going to UK, is great. The UK and other nations providing that kind of training are doing a fantastic job, and I'm sure there'll be elements of this that keep going. There won't be enough capacity inside Ukraine possibly to do everything there, but it was incredibly inefficient. So they were going for a certain amount of time, and then I heard some quotes of like, this is the amount of time training that we got, but this is the amount of time we went for. So there's a lot of time that they're not being trained. There's a lot of inefficiency, and there's travel, and there's costs, and all sorts of stuff involved. If you can take all that training and put it into Ukraine and get the same quality of training, there are so many benefits in terms of logistics and efficiency, etc., and cost, etc., etc. So Syrskyi has announced this breaking news. There you go. If you can read your Ukrainian, it is there for you. Documents have already been signed, and the French instructors are expected in Ukraine. The Russians are livid at the news of French instructors in Ukraine, so they published this, asking the French soldiers to surrender or something like that. So anyway, you're going to see an awful lot of rhetoric from the Russians, both formally and informally, going forward. Now, last thing I'll say in this shorter video is a post from French Aid to Ukraine. I think it would be beneficial for Ukraine and for the NATO armies to have military contingents in Ukraine. France has a suitable unit, the Foreign Legion, Légion étrangère. As an expeditionary unit, it can perform important tasks and contribute to the training of local forces. This is a mutually beneficial process that would strengthen cooperation between Ukraine and NATO. The entry of Western forces into Ukraine should have happened earlier. It is necessary for Western countries as well as for Ukraine itself. It's important to emphasize that this does not mean replacing Ukrainian troops with foreign forces, but rather strengthening the capabilities already on the ground. It's also necessary to coordinate training with the provision of equipment, and this will ensure the effective and appropriate use of these systems once they are deployed in the field. It's obvious, but it must be remembered if the Ukrainians are to learn how to use certain systems, it is essential that these systems are actually made available to them. In Ukraine, Europe's most battle-hardened army is inventing, adapting, and transforming itself to face Putin's Russian army, and now has experience that can benefit its allies. So there's a two-way thing here, where there will be experience and knowledge that's given to the trainers as well. Writer, financier, and captain of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, Pavlo Matyusha, offers a unique insight into the heart of the Ukrainian military training and tactics in a piece in the Grand Continent. And you can go and check that out. That's French Aid to Ukraine's thread there. Now, whoever they send there and whatever capacity, we might not know for some time. There are different roles that can be played here in terms of training infantry, training, say, for example, Caesar crews inside Ukraine, so on and so forth. Lots of scope here. And then there could be mission creep of other countries getting involved. And then you're thinking, air defenses to protect those trainers. So then you are bringing in air defenses that are operational, that are run by allied forces, that then can have that dual purpose of not just protecting the Ukrainian soldiers being trained, or really the trainers doing the training, but also that kind of area. So you might get a radius range that covers maybe something like Lviv. You're doing training near Lviv, and you happen to just cover the skies of Lviv with your air defenses, and then this can then mount up and up and up until there is a much more considerable allied forces operating within Ukraine, not on the front lines, but doing a lot of jobs that allow those Ukrainians to be committed to the front line. I think this is incredibly significant, and hats off to the French for so doing. Really good news. This is a game changer. Is possibly the wrong word, but this is this is an inflection point, I suppose, in the course of this war. Let me know what you think, but I think this is incredibly important point.